Welcome to the Period Besties Podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
Oh my goodness, I love Dr. Carrie Jones. I'm so stoked for everyone to listen to this interview. She's a just fountain of information and super interesting. And I think especially with how hormone replacement therapy and perimenopause is getting more and more research and things are starting to come out. She really is one of those people who just is on the cutting edge. She's got that updated information, and I am so excited for you all to listen to this conversation with her because I know I had some myths busted personally, learned some things I didn't know in this conversation. So I'm just, oh God, this is such a good conversation.
So good. I feel a little bit better about perimenopause, honestly. Like you and I have been talking about this for a while. Like we're both been shifting things in our own life. I've been trying to find a good doctor. And what I loved the most was when we asked her about like the future of women's health, and she was so excited. And she's like, there's more research coming. I feel like this is so promising. I just feel like we ended on a really high note talking about the future. So I actually feel like a lot more grounded and better about the next phase of my hormonal life.
Yeah, same. She really gave a lot of hope and optimism. And that's something that I think we're all desperately looking for these days. It was really nice to have that reassurance and that optimism of the future reinforced.
Plus, she said she shared a lot of really practical steps and easy things, not necessarily to start, but not really spending a lot of money, all of that as well. So I think it's a really great way to think about, okay, let me really think about my foundation to my health and how that's going to help me walk through this phase versus all the medications, all the gadgets, all the things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say one thing before we click over to her. I said this at the end of the interview, but I want to say it right now. When you're listening to her, pick one thing. She's got so many good tips. And I know I said it at the end, but right here at the beginning, before you even listen, just listen to her. And when something dings for you, just do that one thing. Try that one thing. So don't fall into the overwhelm. Just listen with the idea of, I'm going to pick something out that she's got and just do that one thing. So I just wanted to slide that in before we go.
I love that. Like what really resonates with you, like maybe what you're really feels challenging, what really feels like a struggle, what really resonates. I totally agree. Start there and then let that become a habit, a lifestyle, and then think about what other things you might want to add in.
Yeah. Such a good tip. I love it. Thank you. All right. So without further ado, let's bring on Carrie.
Welcome back to the Period Besties Podcast. We have a special guest with us today, Dr. Carrie Jones. Known Carrie for a long time. We've been following your work, and we are so excited and honored to dive into chatting about perimenopause and all the work that you do to support women and women's health. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me back. This is a favorite topic, so I'm excited to talk about it.
I am too. I was trying to think of the last time that we had you. I think we had you for our summit last. And I was just like, oh my God, I just remember it being such a great conversation. And I feel like I walked away with a ton, and I feel like Katie and I got such good feedback from it. It was amazing. So we were just so stoked to have you come on the podcast as well. It's going to be, I'm so excited.
We are so excited. And I'm 45 now. So lots have shifted and changed. And Stasha's 44.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to age you. And things have shifted and changed since last time we spoke too. So I'm really excited to dive into this topic as so many of our listeners have questions, and I feel like this is a lot. All of our friends are going through this. A lot of our clients are too. So it's going to be a great topic. But for everybody that might not know you, can you share about who you are and what you do so everyone can get to know you a little bit more?
Absolutely. Well, I'm 47, so I'm right there in the mix with all of you, going through it myself, and can 100% relate. And I've been in the hormone field since 2005 when I graduated from medical school. I did my residency in women's health and hormones, and then we got a master's in public health. I practiced for a number of years, predominantly seeing women's health, hormones, and got into it right from the get-go because I realized the reason I got into women's health was selfish. I wasn't taught a lot about women. My friends weren't taught a lot about women. My mom didn't know a lot about what was going on. And I thought, oh gosh, we need to change this. And so getting into hormones just made sense to me because it really helped what I was going through. Now, granted, I was a lot younger back then. This is 20 years ago. But through the years, I've seen that the education for women at all decades is really lacking. So from there, I went and became the medical director at Precision Analytical. They are the Dutch test. So they are a functional specialty hormone test, which got me into hormones even more and the research behind hormones and testing hormones. And then I went and worked for Rupa Health. And now I work with a health coach group called Vital. And it's just been wonderful to see all the different aspects of hormones and how they've changed through the years. But yet women's questions are still the same, which goes to show like this podcast, the things you do are needed because women are just not getting the message, full stop. And we need to change that.
It's so funny because just last night I got a DM on Instagram saying, can you do an episode about testing? Because I have heard so many conflicting things, like I need to have my progesterone tested on day 21, but then I need to have my estrogen tested at a different time, and blood tests and urine tests and all these different things. So I was just like, what perfect timing.
Ta-da!
Because I have the expert on testing tomorrow.
Yes. And we can start with that. I'm happy to go into just the kickoff for testing. Well, you'll see on social media that a lot of practitioners, according to the societies, if you are perimenopausal, you don't need to test. And when they say test, they mean estrogen. You have a few of them. So let's say the main estrogen, estradiol, and then progesterone. That's what they're talking about when they're like, oh, you don't need to test. You can just go ahead and go on hormones depending what your symptoms are. When I view testing, though, I view testing really broadly. And I know there are a lot more hormones than just estradiol and progesterone. So if you are that age, I'll put that in quotes, and you still get your period is still pretty regular, you can test all your hormones, including estrogen and progesterone. So when do you test? You can test through blood. You can test through urine. And ideally, you do test 5 to 7 days after you ovulate if you're still ovulating. So what does that mean? If you have a 28-day cycle, usually you're going to test day 19, 20, 21. And you can lump it together. You can do your estrogens then, progesterone then, testosterone, DHEA, thyroid, right? Blood sugar, lipids. Like you can just do a one-stop shop and get the majority of your hormones and other important markers at that time. But let's say you're listening to this and you're like, my cycles are kind of weird. Like they come and they go. They're now 7 days early, but last month I skipped completely. And then I was on time again. And then now I'm late. What is this about? All right, we have to shift testing for you. We may not be able to do the estrogen and the progesterone like we want, but 100% we can do the other hormones. I can check your thyroid. I can check your testosterone and DHEA. You better believe I'm going to check your glucose, your insulin, your cholesterol, et cetera, vitamin D, like all of these markers that go into helping you be healthy. And so when it comes to testing, it feels a little bit like a decision tree. Do you have regular cycles? Yes or no? Do you feel like you ovulate, or do you know if you ovulate? Yes or no? And then going down from there. So I absolutely get the confusion, but I want women to realize when we talk about testing, it is more than just estrogen and progesterone. We really do have to test a lot of markers at this stage because the markers can change very rapidly as we go through the perimenopausal transition.
So how often would you recommend testing then for somebody who, obviously, if you've never had any testing, start there. But then once, like, how often should you be testing to work with your doctor for possible hormones and different things?
If you have the ability and you have the means and you have a practitioner who's willing to do it, my ideal is yearly. And I say yearly because, especially when we get into the markers such as thyroid hormones, glucose, insulin, cholesterol, triglycerides, we tend to see those shift. If they shift rapidly, and it's usually not in a good direction. I have had more women tell me, man, my whole life I've had normal cholesterol. And then all of a sudden I hit 45 and my cholesterol went way up, or my glucose went way up and nothing changed. And I'm like, oh, nothing changed in your diet and exercise, and everything's changing in your hormones. And those hormones play a big role. So I would rather catch a woman as soon as I can to help her. And of course, I'm trying to support her this whole time. But because we women, other than to get maybe our PAP, if nothing's wrong with us, we don't tend to go to the doctor. We may have to be a little more bold and ask, hey, when I'm here for my physical, can I get a bunch of blood work done? I would like to keep track of these things. Now, when it relates to hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, I still do yearly if she's having regular cycles. And a lot of women still have regular cycles through a large part of their 40s. So if we want to know what's going on with their progesterone, coupled with their symptoms, risk factors, etc., then we can evaluate what are we doing with diet and lifestyle, the foundations. Are you ready for hormones? Is that something you want or need? And go from there. But again, technically, the societies say you don't have to test estrogen and progesterone if you're going to go on hormones. You can go on symptoms and age alone. But I'm a little more, again, functional, holistic. And so I do tend to test at least all the other markers I talked about. And we view estrogen and progesterone depending what's going on with their body.
Yeah, it can get really confusing too, because there's a lot of overlapping symptoms.
Yes.
Like I went to my doctor and just said, look, I either have a low thyroid or low progesterone because I've got these symptoms and they're the same for both.
Yeah.
And it's one or the other. And I've had low thyroid before and I'm in my mid 40s. So it's a toss up. So yeah, that's when she was like, let's do a thyroid panel because that's the easiest one to just start with and do. So we did the thyroid panel and sure enough, it was the thyroid. But it actually sparked a conversation. And unfortunately, because it's the United States and our insurance is all weird, I lost my insurance. So I lost that doctor. But before that happened, I had an appointment with her and follow up for the thyroid. And I had said, I think it's time to do just a full hormonal panel as I am. At the time I was 43. So she was very cool. I miss her already, but she was a great doctor. She was younger. She also had endometriosis. So she and I talked a lot about the whole endo because we both had it. We had a great conversation on that. So it was really good. But if you have a doctor that's telling you we don't need to test, do we get a new doctor? Can we go around the doctor and do testing anyway?
Yes. So you can add, if you love your doctor, let's say you have a great primary care. I have a great primary care. My primary care doesn't do hormones. She straight up said to me, that's not an area of interest of mine. I didn't really do any study into that. I don't want to. And I'm like, perfect. But I'd like you as a primary care, even though I am a doctor. Doctors need doctors. And so I can find somebody else to handle that side for me. So we can always add to our healthcare team. And when it comes to testing, even if in perimenopause, our hormones are known to being a little chaotic. Again, when I say hormones, the estrogen and the progesterone. So as we're moving through the perimenopausal transition, if you're going through your 40s and assuming you still have your ovaries, the first hormone to drop out is usually progesterone. Usually we stop ovulating, we stop releasing the egg like we used to in our younger years. And in order to make progesterone, you have to release the egg. The egg literally comes before the chicken. Got to have the egg, then we have the progesterone. So that's the first to go. And then estrogen tends to go a little hog wild sometimes. It'll be high, it'll be low. Even in the same cycle, your cycle may still be regular, but your estrogen's up and down. And then eventually, as you get late stage perimenopause, close to the full postmenopausal time, your estrogen also drops down. It gets really low and feels like it bottoms out. So I understand also in the society saying don't test estrogen, progesterone because it's a wild ride and we're not really sure what you're going to catch when you test it. And I can appreciate that too. I can understand. Sure, you may catch it, quote, on a normal day, but you don't feel normal. You just happen to have caught it at that point. But it is still, again, all the other hormones. Look at your thyroid. If you hadn't suggested thyroid, they maybe would have blown that off. Or even looking at vitamin D levels, again, glucose levels, lipid levels, etc. So it's about this personalizing to the person in front of you. Does it make sense to test your estrogen and progesterone right now? Does it make sense to test all the other hormones? Probably. And then have we tested them before? Can we see a trend over time? Your progesterone in your 30s was a certain number, then you hit 40, and now at 44, we're like, ooh, it's definitely trending down. Sure, it may be going up and down, but as a whole, over the last 10 years, it's trending down. And I think what we're going to start seeing is that with education and availability of the apps and things like that, women are going to start tracking their own labs. And in some medical systems, you can see trends over time. And so if you've ever gotten your progesterone checked before, if you've ever gotten your glucose checked before, like now all of a sudden you can see, and it'll be obvious to you to go, oh, my progesterone went from 15 to 8 to 6, and now it's 4. It's like, we're trending down. It looks like you're probably going to need progesterone here soon, if that's something you want to do. And so with labs, it definitely sounds confusing and overwhelming. Having been in the lab space for as long as I have, I have an advantage. I'm fully aware of that. And I see why the societies are trying to streamline and make it easy for women. I just don't want them to forget about all the other markers and how important it is to test those.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I guess for people that are listening, because most people are familiar with the blood work and the blood testing, but urine testing has definitely grown a lot, and the Dutch test is at the forefront with that. Can you walk through the difference and what would show up differently in each test, and why one test might be better at a certain stage versus another stage? I think that could be really helpful.
The owner of the Dutch test, and Dutch is an acronym, it stands for Dried Urine Test for Comprehensive Hormones. It's not actually to determine if you're of Dutch descent. But the owner of the Dutch test says, when you're looking at all this lab work, whether it's blood work or urine or saliva or stool testing, you're just looking at the same house through different windows and doors, right? You're just getting a different snapshot based on what you're choosing to run. I love blood work is great, even for hormones, especially because it's often covered by insurance. It's often pretty easy. It's a one and done. You get your blood drawn and go home and call it good. Now, the problem with blood work is that you can't often see what we call our metabolites. So you make an estrogen, where is estrogen going? You make a testosterone, where is testosterone going? And the places it's going when it breaks down in the body has an impact on your health. There's a lot of research now on these metabolites and the impact they have. They can activate receptors, they can turn things on or off. And that's where urine testing comes into play, specifically the Dutch test. So you get estrogen, and then you can see how estrogen is getting broken down in the body. Is it getting broken down in a better way or an unhealthy way? You get to see testosterone. Is testosterone getting broken down in the way that's going to increase acne and hair loss and hair growth in places we don't want? Or is it getting broken down a different way? So it's nice to have that second, third layer to look at. It's like peeling back layers of an onion when we use something such as a urine test, a Dutch test. On top of it, because the collection of the urine test is generally throughout the day, that means we're getting a compilation of the hormones throughout the day. So you get a blood draw at noon. All I can tell you is what's going on in your blood right then at noon. But in a urine test throughout the day, I get 4 or 5 collections, and then we collate them together. So if you don't make any progesterone in the morning, but you do make it in the afternoon, I've caught it. I can still see it because hormones are pulsed. They're not turned on like a hose and just run continuously. And that's really nice. On top of it, I get the pulse of cortisol. So I can see cortisol in the morning, through the day, in the evening before bed, which is better than I got my blood drawn one time. This is my cortisol one time. I'm like, that's great, except you can't sleep. And so I need to know your cortisol before bed, or I need to know why you need coffee and sugar at 3 p.m., or I need to know why you need a nap at 3 p.m. I need to see it at different parts of the day. And that's the nice expanded part of it.
That's such a good point, that cortisol roller coaster throughout the day, and not only seeing that snapshot. And it also reminded me of thyroid. There's just free T3, free T4. There's so many steps in the thyroid making process,
Yes.
using process, that one test can only tell you so much. It's not actually telling you like what's being used, what's not being, you're making this, but then it's not getting into the cells properly or whatever. So you're ending up with all of this extra. And yeah, it's a lot more complicated in the body than we think of, but it doesn't have to be complicated when we're talking about testing, right? Which is why I love the Dutch test so much, because it reduces a lot of that external complications of what do we do, why. Also, not a huge fan of blood tests. So if I can avoid them.
Yeah. And I'm going to totally rat him out, but the owner of the Dutch test passes out when he gets his blood drawn. So like some people are horrified. It makes them nauseous, dizzy. They don't like the sight of blood or needles. And that's fair. It's a phobia. And so it's way easier to pee on a strip of paper that looks like a flimsier pregnancy test and let it dry and mail it back. Most women have done that, at least something like that to some degree in their lifetime. And it's a lot easier versus having to remember to get up, go to the lab, be fasting, get a blood draw, get poked. That can be really traumatizing for a lot of people.
Yeah. Not the last time I had a blood draw, but a couple of years ago, I had a blood draw and I hit a nerve in my elbow and I couldn't actually use my left hand for 6 months. Driving the car, which we have a manual car, was really hard because it was I couldn't grip with my left hand for almost 6 months. And then it was a year before the pain stopped. Flashing down my arm. So then, of course, now every time I go to the blood draw, I sit down with the nurse and I'm like, look, somebody hit my nerve last time. So I need you to actually focus on what we're doing here. I know you do a million blood draws a day, but I need you to just be present for right now.
Don't do that.
I almost pass out every time. And every time I have a different nurse and she thinks that I'm going to die or something. I'm like, just let me sit here. I just need 5 minutes. It's okay. I know this is what I need, but yeah, I don't like doing blood work, and I have to do it for my thyroid very often. And then when I was pregnant, oh my God, I was like, please stop taking blood from me. I can't take it.
Yeah.
I guess.
And even with thyroid, there's some research to show where when our menstrual cycle can play a role. And the research, we need more research around it. There's not a lot of money in this, but just it's interesting that we think of estrogen and progesterone to test a certain time of our cycle. And like our thyroid, for example, there's some research to show we maybe should avoid the time of ovulation if you're still ovulating. So when you ovulate, release the egg. I always describe it like the fountains at the Bellagio. Whether you've been to Vegas or not, or seen a movie, there are these huge fountains that spout off, music plays, it's this whole event. And ovulation is the same way. So when we think of it being a big event, of course the thyroid's going to get involved. And so if you are testing your thyroid around ovulation, you may find your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, in some cases can be higher than you would not around ovulation. And that can be really scary or throw you off because you may be thinking, oh my gosh, my thyroid's worse. My TSH is going up. I don't understand. And really it was just the day 2 of ovulation. And then the next day it would go back to normal. And again, there's just some research around this, but I have seen it accidentally drawing blood work on people close to ovulation. And I'm like, all right, we're not doing that anymore. Let's try to avoid ovulation when it comes to getting your thyroid drawn.
That's so interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't, I had no idea either. And I usually try and do my blood work somewhere around ovulation so that I feel the strongest and most confident.
If you're consistent, that's fine. If you go every time around ovulation, it's apples to apples. But if you're just randomly going whenever, you may notice in some women, it's going to be a point or two different, which can be enough of a point or two different that they adjust your medication. And then so every time you're like, gosh, keep adjusting my medication. I don't understand. And it could just be timing of the blood draw.
That makes sense. That makes so much sense. Oh, that's huge. Because Katie and I both have thyroid. And we're both having to go get tested for our thyroid stuff regularly. So that's a huge little tip right there.
Yeah, it could be depending on the woman, right? Like I said, the research there's just a little bit out there, but and just having seen it anecdotally, I'm like, oh, maybe we should just wait in the wings. Do it around your period, lead it up to your period, skip ovulation.
Yeah, makes sense.
It makes sense. So once you get your blood work, you've been doing it every year, hopefully, or lab work in general. Let's talk about kind of hormone replacement therapy a little bit, because I feel like this is definitely, I've even read articles about it. It seems like it's everywhere and more mainstream in that sense. I feel like it was something that we all talked about. And it's very different than what our moms got in terms of like hormones. Like the landscape has changed a lot. So how do we have this conversation about hormone replacement therapy? It is different. There is the bioidentical. What does it mean? What does hormone replacement therapy actually mean?
Yes. So you will see it on especially social media studies and whatnot. So we all grew up with HRT, hormone replacement therapy. And now you will sometimes see MHT or MT, so menopausal therapy or menopausal hormone therapy. And they can mean, depending on the person, they can mean different things. So menopause therapy is just to give you a little bit of hormone to help your symptoms and make you feel better. Whereas hormone replacement therapy is maybe replacing the hormone to a level that you were when you were maybe in your 30s, so to speak. It's to replace you back to supporting your bones, supporting your brain, supporting your heart, etc. A lot of times they're interchanged, though. A lot of times you'll hear HRT, MHT, and the speaker means same. So with hormone replacement therapy, it used to have a very good reputation. And then in 2002, the Women's Health Initiative, which was the big study that blew it out of the water, essentially made front page headlines that said hormones cause cancer, specifically estrogen. Estrogen causes cancer. And everyone got their HRT pulled. Most everyone got their HRT pulled for fear of cancer. 20 years later, we have now come full circle on that. And we know a lot of the researchers in that article have since done additional research that said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, my bad, that wasn't entirely true. We knew the WHI had a lot of issues, the age of the women, the health of the women. We knew our analysis wasn't the greatest. The news ran with information that wasn't entirely true. And since that time, we've actually proven that estrogen does not single-handedly cause cancer, I should say. But unfortunately, that has not made the news until very recently, and now we see it all over, and now women are getting back into hormone replacement therapy. What we've also seen is they've done analyses on the women who went off the hormones. What other things did they go on to develop? The risk for neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, bone loss, osteoporosis, fracture, frailty, things like that. Cardiovascular disease, death, and it's a pretty shocking number that maybe that if they'd stayed on their HRT, it could have prevented or reduced the risk of. So now the pendulum has swung and we're seeing everywhere that HRT is fantastic. And HRT can be fantastic, but I do want to reiterate HRT is single-handedly not a magic cure. If you don't have your foundations dialed in, diet, nutrition, lifestyle, community, sleep, all the things, estrogen cannot come along and be the savior. However, they do great hand in hand. If you're the right candidate for you, or if you're the right candidate for it, the benefits outweigh the risks for whatever that is, and then go for it. Go for HRT. And the studies continue to come out. You will see online a lot about evidence-based research on HRT. They're actively being studied right now. We're trying to keep up with it as is. So we have a lot of information on bones, or we have information on the brain, or we have information on the heart, and that is continuing. So we will stay up with the research. So I do want to reassure women that when it comes to HRT, you will also hear bioidentical, which means body identical. It looks like what you have floating around, your estrogen, your progesterone, it's the same. Identical does not automatically mean compounding at a compounding pharmacy, which is another myth that's out there. I've heard, oh, we don't do bioidentical, that's compounding. You can get bioidentical at a compounding pharmacy. You can also get it at a traditional pharmacy. Your Walgreens, CVS, Costco, Sam's, they all have bioidentical as well. They don't call it that, but that is what it is. The patches that are available, most of them, the progesterone pill is called Prometrium. That is all the same and looks like what's going on in the body. And then we have the synthetic. The synthetic is really ultimately in that Women's Health Initiative, the progestin, the synthetic progesterone. It's a fake progesterone. The progestin is what really was the problem in the study. That's really when it slightly increased the risk of breast cancer, it was the progestin that was the problem. In fact, in that study, they had an estrogen-only arm. Women were just on estrogen, that's it. And that group did not get breast cancer. They did not have an increased risk of breast cancer, but that did not make the news. That is now made the news, but it didn't back then. And so it's been really a lot of untangling of 20 years of, when you make the front cover of a lot of big magazines and newspapers, estrogen causes cancer, and 20 years later, we're trying to untangle that. I understand why women are concerned and confused and upset when it comes to hormones. But I'm super glad for all the education that's out there now. But again, hormones by themselves are not saviors. We have to do all the things as we move through perimenopause. Hashtag all the things.
Which is perfect, because that's actually one of the questions on our list, is the healthy things that you can do for menopause.
Yes.
Definitely. But I do have to say, we have a Ladies of the Mountain tea here. A lot of the women are older than I am that come, but one of them, who's just a few years older than I am, was saying how she was going to avoid HRT. Like, she was absolutely not going to do it. All of these things. But she also had just recently found out she's celiac, which she had no signs of, except that now she has early onset osteoporosis, and really suffering like badly. She has no outward symptoms. It's just that when she goes for a bone density test, it's like terrible news. And we had a whole conversation on, I think you might want to reconsider the HRT, especially since you're having these bone density struggles, because it's quite literally those hormones that help you build that bone density. So a long conversation. And I'm throwing that in there mostly for our listeners, because it's at the table at tea or lunch or friends dinner, where those conversations, especially around HRT, pop up. And it's that grassroots talking to your friends, and then just making sure that they're aware that the options are not what they were 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And the research was not it was robust, but what made the news, like you said, was not everything. So it's those, as you're listening, these conversations are going to pop up in your everyday life. Maybe take a moment and have that conversation with your friends and family. So I just wanted to throw that in there as you were saying that, because I was just like, oh my God, yes, think
of you, like both of you have thyroid issues. Mm-hmm. So while there are natural options for thyroid, you still have to do the foundations. You still need the nutrients to help your thyroid make the thyroid and convert the thyroid. You still have to have good liver health, because that's where a lot of your thyroid is converted to T3. But at the end of the day, if you need thyroid replacement, you take thyroid replacement, right? If you're a type 1 diabetic and autoimmune, you can't make insulin anymore. Sure, you still need to do the foundations, but at the end of the day, you don't make insulin. So if insulin is going to save your life, you go on insulin. And it's very similar in the hormone replacement world. You don't have to, but it could make a world of difference in your health. And again, this is where the risk benefit, personalized care comes into it. So when I hear the pushback of it's not natural, women are supposed to go through menopause, we're supposed to go through aging, I'm like, we're supposed to die too, but I would like to do it not in a wheelchair, not with a broken hip, not with dementia, not with heart disease. I would like to do it super robust, having just gotten off a 2-week trip through Italy with my grandkids, and then I'm in my 90s, and then I fall asleep and don't wake up, and that's it. And I think sometimes we forget that, where just because it's replacement doesn't mean it's synthetic or it's bad or it's, oh gosh, that's pharmaceutical. So's thyroid, so's insulin. Yeah. And again, I realize with thyroid, not everybody chooses thyroid medication path, but a lot of people do, and it makes their life exponentially better no matter what they've tried. And HRT falls similarly into that role. It's your estrogen you're replacing. It's your progesterone that you're replacing, and it could make a world of difference for you.
And we're living longer. That sort of downslope of losing the estrogen and progesterone and whatnot in your body was okay, but then you didn't live so long. So those osteoporosis and dementia and those things that are affected by your hormone were not as big of a deal, because we weren't living long enough to hit those benchmarks, but we are now. So extending that hormonal boosters, I'm going to say, for all of those health factors, to have a healthier, longer life is becoming more of if you want to make it into your 90s healthy, right. A lot of, my family all made it into their 90s, except for if you didn't die in your 30s from breast cancer in my family, you made it to your 90s easily, and no one had dementia. But then you have the broken hip, you have this, that, and the other. So I'm looking going, I have a longevity style family over here. I don't want to end up in that place where I'm having bone density issues and I can't do anything because if I break a hip, I'm toast. Like I want to have that. And that does mean extending that hormonal boosters a little bit past what may be a natural menopause currently. But if you want that longer health, we're in this beautiful place where evolution has not caught up, but science is trying to help us. Let's take the help where we can get it. But in the meantime, what are those healthy baselines? What are some of those just day-to-day healthy things that we can do to make it so that we might not need to hit the HRT, or if we do, we're just boosting the effectiveness?
One of the things I do want to start with is that for some women, the myth was started that menopause is just hot flashes, or perimenopause was just hot flashes, night sweats, some weight gain, and you can't sleep. Like that's it. Or maybe some moodiness. It seems to be this sort of perimenopause equals hot flashes, and not everybody gets hot flashes. There's, depending on who you ask, there's 100+ signs and symptoms. In fact, a friend of mine, a researcher, Andrea Donsky, her group did a survey of thousands of women. And again, over 100 signs and symptoms came back. So if you're listening to this thinking, I don't have hot flashes, I'm not there, I don't need it. But at the same time, think of all the things under the skin we can't see. You can't see or feel your cholesterol go up. You can't see or feel your glucose go up. You can't see or feel your bones degrading until they've broken or you're getting stress fractures. You can't really notice your brain so much until all of a sudden people are like, what is wrong with you? Is this early dementia? When we make this transition, it is affecting all 12 systems of our body. It's not just hot flashes and night sweats. It's affecting your immune system. Again, brain, bone, skin, reproductive, everything. We're going to start with that. So what can we do? It's all the foundational stuff that we know to do. And because we've been pretty resilient in our 30s, and we've probably been burning the candle at both ends, and we've probably been maybe working, raising a family, going through life, putting some of this self-care stuff off, we have to make it really serious in our 40s. Now is the time we hit our 40s where we double down on the exercise, the weightlifting, because we're getting muscle wasting. It's harder for us to build and maintain our skeletal muscle compared to when we were younger because of the hormone changes. So the more you can do to increase, add on, and maintain your skeletal muscle, the better. And it'll only help your bones. So that's a huge one. Weightlifting is a big thing. Your nutrition, what's at the end of your fork? Is it helping, or is it potentially processed junk food, soda, high sugar regularly? That is even things like, think of like alcohol regularly, that's going to negatively impact your health. Your body runs on the nutrients you largely ingest. So if you're choosing ultra processed foods often, then your body's going to struggle to get the B vitamins or get the magnesium or get the vitamin C that it needs to make your body go round. Plus, we need the foods, not only for that, but even like fiber, right? Like we need the colorful foods for the polyphenols and the flavonoids, all these things that are so beneficial to the body, but we just don't ever get taught unless you're actually in this field. So those are key. Then sleep. If you've been putting off getting good sleep because you're running a business, raising a family, up late on your phone, mindlessly scrolling on TV, getting your second wind, so you're going through emails, like we have to change that. Sleep is when we rest. It's when we repair. It's when our part of our body, our brain detoxifies. Sleep is so critical to the aging process. And we tend to sleep less, of course, in perimenopause. And so the more we can prioritize sleep, the better. And then the last thing, just to keep it, again, easy and manageable, is community. Half of the population are female. Half of that population is perimenopausal, postmenopausal, somewhere in that transition, and they're going through it with you. You're not alone. And as we make this transition, other hormones that get impacted are hormones such as oxytocin. Oxytocin we often think about is like when you're breastfeeding, it's the bonding hormone. When you're with your partner, it's the bonding hormone. But it also helps us in our communities. It also helps us want to be with our friends, be with the high tea group, right? To be out there. And what can happen is as women make this transition, their progesterone goes down, so they feel less calm, more anxious. Their estrogen starts to go down, so they're maybe more depressed, less inclined to be community related. And now all of a sudden, they become more introverted. They don't want to leave the house. They're fine on their couch, reading their book, drinking their tea, but they don't ever make that community connection. And women by nature are very community oriented. And a lot of women are going through perimenopause. So keeping those little joys up, keeping that connection, keeping your friends and family makes a huge difference as you're going through this. Don't feel like you need to isolate. You're not going through this alone. There's nothing wrong with you. Menopause is not a disease. There's a lot we can do, but definitely if you're listening to this going, dang, she just called me out. I am totally on my couch with my tea. I haven't left the house in days. I just get Instacart. We need to support the hormones in some way so that you can feel like yourself again.
Let's all check on our friends.
Yes.
If you haven't talked to someone in a while, check in, see if they're leaving the house. I love that. It's so essential. And yeah, Stasha was like, you called me out.
Yeah, I swear if we didn't have this tea, because I work from home. Partner works in town. So he does all of the grocery shopping and errand running and whatnot. And I just hang out in the forest for the most part.
Which is not a bad thing. I'm a big fan of the forest, but also it's like you got to get out of the comfort zone sometime. Got to stretch yourself. Got to try the new things. Because what happens is when we're younger, we say yes. We're like, oh, I'll try that new thing. I'll go to that new class. I'll do that. And as we get in our 40s, one, we become more comfortable and very confident with who we are, and we set boundaries, right? We have this inner power now when we hit our 40s, but we also have this, no, thank you. I'm not doing that. No, try me. And so we start to cut off things that used to bring us joy, and just reminding women of, hey, we generally do well and better in a community-based situation, at least one-on-one with your friends, sister, somebody. Remember to get out there again. And it's going to support hormones like oxytocin, which is going to support your brain, which is going to reduce your stress. And that's where I try to encourage women, because I can see it myself sometimes. I work from home. Some days I'm like, oh, I need to leave the house. Okay. And all our friends are about the same age and they see it too. They're like, oh yeah, we should leave the house. Let's have lunch. Let's get together.
No, it's so true. It's tough, especially when you're juggling work and kids and a house and all those things. It's so hard to carve out that time. But as you said, especially when you hit those 40s, you need to start prioritizing taking care of yourself. It needs to become one of those front burner issues and not something that you'll do when you have the chance. Now it needs to go in the calendar. It needs to be set aside time. It needs to be enforced boundaries, right? You just said we get better at enforcing those boundaries. This is one that needs to be need to enforce that self-care time, that time with friends, that time date night, whatever it is. But you need to enforce those social connections and those taking care of yourself and that kind of thing. And it's tough, but it's deprogramming that hustle culture out of your brain too, right? A lot of it is deprogramming you're the only one who can take care of the house. You're the only one that can take care of the kids. You're the only one that can do that job. There's a lot of that deprogramming as well. So when you hear that voice pop up in your head going, no, but really what you should be doing is scrubbing the kitchen floor.
Right.
You need to go, no, I should not. What I should be doing is castor oil compress, having coffee with my friends, whatever it is. But it's like the voice doesn't go away, but you have to be able to answer it better.
There's the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. And we generally, a lot of women listening to this podcast are more that type A organized, get stuff done, burn the candle at both ends. And then they hit their 40s. And because hormones have changed, they're not as resilient. Right? Things are a little more threadbare. They can't bounce back nearly as quick. And it's frustrating. And we compare ourselves to the woman we were in our 30s. What the heck, she could remember and she could do it. Why can't I? It's just this transition. We're going to lean into this part. We're going to be proactive on the things that we can. And we're going to prioritize self-care. Self-care is not selfish, because truly, if you have an empty cup, if you are empty, how are you going to take care of your family? How are you going to take care of your business or your job or your house or your friend group or what have you? How are you going to show up? You're going to show up depleted. And so a lot of women, a lot of my patients showed up in their 40s completely depleted, which made it that much worse for them. They're like, man, this perimenopause sucks. I am completely depleted. And I'm like, I know, it's time to put into the cup. Let's give back to yourself, because these hormones truly are depleting. So let's not have two things deplete at the same time.
Yeah. I love that. Before I forget to ask you, for everyone that's listening, what type of doctor should we be looking for if our current doctor, we don't feel like they can take us through HRT and they can take us through the perimenopause, menopause journey? Is there anyone type of doctor that specializes in this next step?
That's what's happening right now actively, which is very exciting. So you would think even your OBGYN should be trained in it. But as I said, my primary care is an OBGYN and she's not. And she's very much, it's not what I don't do hormones. And she's not that age. In fact, she's pregnant. So I don't want to do this right now. Give her 10 years, she may change her mind. So even if you're seeing an OB, don't assume that they have this education, but you can ask, hey, I am perimenopausal, or call the front desk. I'm perimenopausal. I'm looking for somebody who's menopause trained, who understands, who could talk me through hormones. Is that this clinic? Is that somebody here? So that's like the first baseline. Either look on their website or call the front desk and ask. You will see now a lot of practitioners, whether it's a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a PA, an ND, they're getting menopause trained and they're starting to advertise it. Oh, I've gotten certified by the Menopause Society, or I've gotten certified by different courses and classes, and I have a pretty good idea of hormones. And there's no actual designation, I don't think, in my experience, that does it better. It's what kind of training have you gotten when it comes to hormones and menopause, and don't just assume because they're an endocrinologist or because they're an OB that they really get menopause. You have to ask, because they may be like, oh no, I do diabetes and thyroid, I don't do menopause. Or I do babies and fertility and physicals, I don't do menopause. And that's fine. So you can search and ask around.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more challenging to find an OB that does specialize in that. It's because I moved recently and I interviewed 5 different doctors, and I finally found someone that I think might be able to take me through this. But everybody that I talk to, most of their offices is fertility and babies.
Yeah. And until they get older, years and years ago, like 15 years ago, 18 years ago, I used to work with an OB in her office. And of course, she was 18 years younger. Her kids were little. She was also a gynecology surgeon. And as she got older, her practice completely transitioned. All of a sudden, she was a perimenopause, menopause expert, and she's wonderful. I still refer to her. And I'm like, yeah, once as a woman practitioner, you hit these milestones, you transition often your education with it because you're going through it.
Yeah.
So that's why I say ask, just because they say, again, nothing against OBGYNs at all. It's just, are you also certified, taught, learned in menopause and hormone replacement therapy? Ask those questions.
Yeah, I had people asking me about perimenopause 10, 15 years ago when I started period coaching. And I was like, you know what? Give me 10, 15 years and I'll be there. And then really, I'm just trying to learn everything I can right now about menstrual cycles and what's going on and how it's affecting us. And when I hit perimenopause, then 100%. I'll be thrilled to help people through perimenopause.
Exactly. And that is changing, like I said, because of the swing of the pendulum into the idea of perimenopause, menopause, hormones, the research money going towards it now. I think that's going to be a major shift in schools, all schools, every medical, again, ND, NP, PA, ND, coaching. It doesn't matter. I think we're going to see a shift of, oh, we totally forgot this age group. We should educate on it. Oops.
I will say I sponsored one of the Planned Parenthood Rocky Mountains, because that's my district, events. And they were talking about how they do keep very current on things for their doctors, nurses, because Planned Parenthood has the whole gamut of certifications and stuff. So I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood personally, because they tend to attract younger doctors. So they have more current information. Not to be ageist about that, but a lot of doctors, as they get older, just stop following research. They do their thing. They're comfortable with it, but they tend to attract younger people, and they do very much intentionally stay current with research and issues and things. I'm going to go to Planned Parenthood either way to get a local OBGYN just because of that, because I want to find somebody who can help with the perimenopause transition that will be a little bit more current and up to date. And I think that's just the best bet. And then sponsoring that brunch and hearing them talking about that active work, making sure that they're current, making sure they're knowing what's going on recently. I was just like, it really solidified that decision.
And remember, a lot of the hormones available are considered bioidentical. So even no matter what, if you go, because I know some people have the myth of, oh, my OB won't prescribe bioidentical. It's actually, as I said, a lot of the patches or pills can be bioidentical. They may not advertise it that way, but it will say just straight progesterone. It'll say straight estradiol. And that's what we're going for. It's a progestin that usually a lot of women are looking to avoid just because of the research on progestins and breast cancer. Even if you get a prescription for something at Walgreens, Target, Sam's, Costco, pharmacy, just double check, is this actual, ask the pharmacist or your doctor, is this, or practitioner, is this estradiol? Is this actual progesterone? Because it may not say, it's not going to say bioidentical on it. The other caveat I want to put on that is that they are still required to give you a booklet of information around that hormone, and it will say the scariest things possible. So when you go get at your pharmacy progesterone, which is known as prometrium, if that's the route they go, you go, the booklet is like causes cancer, huge problem, clots, all the things. And that is actively, they're trying to get that changed across pharmacies because it's so outdated and it's such outdated information. When we talk about, are you updated or not? Like the pharmacies aren't even updated. They're still required to put that information in with hormones, even though it's largely, a lot of it is not true anymore. So don't freak out when you get the white paper and you're like, oh my gosh, progesterone causes cancer and blood clots. Oh, outdated information.
Yeah, that's really important for everyone to really listen. Yeah. How long does it usually take to update that type of information with the prescriptions and the medication?
Are you ready for this? 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Unless it's a
No
black box
way.
warning, they can put a black box warning on very quickly. But to get a black box warning, even sometimes can take significant, because you have to prove it. Black box meaning like the worst of the worst, be very careful. But to change this update, just in general, to update guidelines and whatnot, it's a lot longer than you would even.
I never would have thought it would take that long.
Which is part of the problem when we talk about evidence-based. 20 years ago, evidence-based was the Women's Health Initiative. And we're 20 years later, we know so much. It's a 180 difference now, but yet some of the guidelines, the pharmacies, they just haven't changed with it. Definitely moving the biggest cruise ship you've ever seen. It's very slow.
There's so many bureaucracy levels to get through, which on one hand is good because you want to have lots of checks along the way for medications and health stuff. But on the other hand, like you said, when you want to correct something, you have to go through all those same checks, and it has to go through studies and human trials. And then of course the CDC approval process and the government's approval process, the NHS or whatever. It has to go through all the different government systems to get to finally you as the user. So it takes a long time, which pros and cons, like you want to have lots of testing, you want to make sure things are right. But then when something gets through and it's wrong, and doing it is just as hard as doing it in the first place. So it's of a catch-22 on that front.
Yeah. So I always mention when you get the white paper, don't freak out.
It's good to
we know it's outdated.
Yeah. Thinking about the future, where do you feel things are moving in terms of women's health, period coaching? Where do you see this trajectory going?
Positively, very positively. I see somebody on social media said, I wish I could remember who actually said this. They said it's having a moment. Women's health, perimenopause, menopause is having a moment. And somebody else said, no, it's a movement. And I was like, yeah, it's a movement in the right direction. Women were kept out of research because of our cycles for years and years. The FDA actually had to step in and like mandate, okay, put women back in research because we've just included men and then extrapolated it to women. And that applies to mice and rats and monkeys. They used male version because female versions generally had menstrual cycles, and that would, quote, get in the way of the study and was a compounding factor. So that is all changing. And now the research, the amount of money coming out of the NIH for research for women is huge. And we're seeing a lot more female researchers researching women's stuff like this, which I think is very exciting. Now, the pendulum is definitely swung all the way to one side where you will see, and I'm very glad for it, hormones are the savior, and everybody, maybe it's the message I see over and over, and patients asking me is, I saw on social media, everyone needs hormones. Maybe, but we also need the foundations. And so I think the pendulum, I'm super glad it swung and we're getting all the information and availability for hormone replacement, but we still need to have that foundational education of there's still a lot you can do to be proactive, and hormones are fantastic, but it goes with the whole holistic approach here. We have to remember all the proactive things you can do that doesn't necessarily rely on hormones. And then we for sure add hormones if you need them, benefit outweighs the risk, you qualify, et cetera. So I'm really and it's moving quickly thanks to research and money and social media. It's buckle up because here it comes.
One of the things that we talk about in period coaching school all the time, like as a period coach, we have the opportunity to work with our clients, right? Like you go to the doctor, you get your suggestions, but then they're not there to help you actually make the changes in real life. And that takes time and step at a time. And it takes some hand holding. And that's where I'm always telling the students, you're the gap between your doctor and your patient. Your doctor's saying you need to work out more, you need to eat healthier, but then how?
What does that mean? Yeah. And a period coach is also going to coach women what's coming up.
Yes.
Right? They're the GPS map of what's ahead. You may be coaching somebody who's in their 20s or even 30s. And you can say, look, we're working on this now. Here's what's happening now. And here's what we see in the future. Here's what nobody taught you in school that we need to prepare you for your 40s. And I know it doesn't sound glamorous or sexy to think about it because it's years away. But trust me, we want to enter our 40s with the best health possible because it all changes. And it's easier if you have a great foundation going into your 40s than if your foundation is rocky and crumbly and cracked and not doing very well. So having a period coach younger to show the light is huge. And I think that's going to be a big part of education out there is instead of just, okay, I'm 45, what do I do? We're going to get, okay, I'm 35, what do I do to prepare for 10 years? And that's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, me too. I love those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always like, not to scare you, but this is coming. So let's dial some things in.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. What do you do? What's your like day-to-day self-care health routine? What's the non-negotiables for you?
The non-negotiables. My husband would say I'm very disciplined. And I've been in this medicine 20 years. So I'm definitely a little bit different than maybe the average listener, given my knowledge. But so I'll tell you my non-negotiables. Okay. I'm like, where do I start? First of all, I am gluten-free. I have celiac. So non-negotiable for me, a lot are dietary. So I am definitely probably in the 80, I do 80-20, right? I do a lot of organic, a lot of grass-fed. I do high protein. When it comes to nutrition, women need a lot more protein than they think. I am a meat eater. So getting my protein and my nutrition in is key. Number 2 is hydration. I can definitely tell when I'm dehydrated. My brain doesn't work as well. I don't feel as good. I'm tired. And so getting my hydration, electrolytes, and minerals in is number 2. Number 3 is sleep. I'm still working on sleep. I'm trying to, I go up and down in prioritizing sleep. I am totally human. Sometimes I mindlessly scroll and all of a sudden 45 minutes have gone by and I'm like, damn it, I did it too. But sleep I notice huge difference, of course, when I get killer sleep, prioritize sleep. So I work for that. And then movement, I definitely prioritize movement. I have a dog who is active, we were talking about. So he definitely gets my steps in every day. We go on a lot of walks and then rotating in weightlifting. And then I've recently gotten into sprinting. I interviewed Dr. Stacy Sims, who told me that perimenopausal women need to once or twice a week get some sprints in, whether it's on a row machine, actually sprinting, or a certain bike. Because so it's 30 seconds all out and then 1 to 3 minute recovery and go back and forth. And I did my first sprint. I hate running and I felt amazing. And I was like, okay, Dr. Sims, I see how it is. But between the weightlifting and the sprinting, it does different things to our muscles in perimenopausal women to help with muscle growth and maintaining as opposed to losing. We get as a stimulus coupled with the protein. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying to learn all these things and do it. And then I would say supplement wise, my non-negotiables, every day I take what's called sulforaphane, which is broccoli sprouts or in a capsule. Broccoli sprouts are really great for detoxification. So I do sulforaphane or eat broccoli sprouts if I'm so motivated. Magnesium is a non-negotiable for me. I do magnesium every day. If I was on a deserted island, the one supplement I would take is magnesium. not vitamin D because you're already on an island. So I'm assuming sun. I also try to take creatine every day. Creatine is now also made the rounds in social media. Creatine, we used to think about, it's what the bros took before they went and worked out at their bodybuilding stages. Now we know better. Now we know women need creatine. It's important for our brain, our bones, our muscles, whether you're working out or not. 3 to 5 grams a day is really helpful. So those are probably the three. Oh, and then fish oil. I do some sort of fish oil every day for heart health, skin, brain. And I was going through like PMS. I was really angry. And I was talking to a good girlfriend of mine, Dr. Kate Kresge, and she goes, you get 3 grams of fish oil in, studies have shown it'll reduce anger. And I was like, whatever. Sure enough, it worked. So thank you, Dr. Kate. So I do add in either fish oil or fatty 15, which is a different type of fat, in to help all the things, heart, cells, brain, energy. And I have a lot of, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I have a lot of supplements, but those are the ones I don't forget about. I think those are my non-negotiable things. And then I laugh a lot. I have my sign right there says healing happens at joy. I find everything funny. And so I am working hard to stay connected, be in my truth, set boundaries, and have fun while doing it.
That's so good. I absolutely adore that. I have been doing the weightlifting thing, but I have not been doing the sprinting. But
sprinting's hard. Don't just jump into sprinting. I should put the big caveat on there. If you've hurt yourself in any way, your Achilles, your knees, your hips, anything, but if you have access to a rower or even some sort of stationary bike, anything you can do all out 30 seconds and then rest 1 to 3 minutes and then go back and forth. And so the first time I did it, I just went back and forth 3 or 4 times. Now I'm up to 8 back and forths. And so sprinting, walking, and I do it on a treadmill only because I have a treadmill and that I'm just starting it out versus going outside or finding a track or something. So baby steps. I'm getting there.
Yeah. I've been rowing and I really like it.
yeah.
Yeah. I have a membership to a place called Hot Works. I don't know if it's national or not, but
yeah, I know what that is.
Yeah. You like work out in the sauna.
Yeah.
So I was always going to the sauna. I'm like, now I can do both. So I'll do a spin or row for 15 minutes and then I'll go lift my weights. But I'm also getting that like detox in, and I love the heat even in the summer. So it feels really good.
Yeah. And I should say, I have the toys. I have a sauna right there. I have red light in my bathroom. So when I'm getting ready, I turn the red light on. But again, I know these things, that cost money. They're not practical and tactical for everyone. If you're listening to this and already overwhelmed, the non-negotiables, I was thinking, what do I even do when I travel? I'm like, yeah, these are the things I do when I travel. I seek out the healthy food and I usually go for a walk and I bring my supplements with me and I have a sleep mask and headphones. And yeah, these are the non-negotiables that I do. I can't bring my sauna with me or my big red light panel, and as much as I like them. So do them if it fits in your budget and you want to try it. Otherwise, if you're just listening to this for the first time, dipping your toe into it, start with the easy stuff. It'll make a difference.
Definitely.
Yeah. We always joke that you don't need to buy weights, just a couple of cans of tinned beans or a watermelon or a jug of milk, or there's things in your house that are heavy that you can use as a weight. So it's like we have an idea of, oh, I need equipment or I need to spend money to do this. And the reality of the situation is a lot of the things you don't. You can find something that's already in your house, or like we go for a hike and the national forest is our backyard. So how hard would it be to be like, all right, let's sprint up the hill for 30 seconds and then stroll for a bit and then do a little sprint through the forest. And then see, you can do a lot of those things for free.
Yeah.
And we didn't.
Or you can come and rent my children and lift them all day. Just kidding. But they want to be picked up all the time.
Good for the arms. Good for the arms and back, right?
Yep.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so before we do the lightning round questions, real quick, tell us where people can find you and about your free gift.
Yes. So you can find me on my website, drcarriejones.com. And I also hang out a lot on Instagram at dr.carriejones. I've dipped my toe into TikTok. No promises. That's wild, but I am over there as well. And then my free gift, I have an ebook on, of course, perimenopause and menopause, because I kept getting asked the same questions. And I think sometimes it's important to have it in writing so that you can read over it at your leisure. And I am happy to gift that to everyone who's listening.
I can't wait, because I'm definitely one of those, I need to see it for it to really like sink in people. So I'm super stoked to go download that and have a read through myself.
All right. Are we ready? So this should be a fun, bring you joy, laughing conversation. Go with your gut instinct. We're just going to ask a quick lightning round of questions so people can get to know you a little bit more, but don't think too much into it. Whatever the first response is, go with it.
Okay.
All right. So what is your biggest craving?
Oh, dark chocolate. Always. Always. I should say that was a non-negotiable for me also. I have dark chocolate every day.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Now,
Therapeutic.
I assume that you eat the dark chocolate to satisfy that craving.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Yeah. And I'm dark. I'm like 85% dark when I go dark. So I like the taste of dark as opposed to milk or white chocolate or what have you. And then I'm like, there's some medicinal benefit here. One, it supports dopamine because you hit that craving. And then two, you've got a little flavonoids in there. So it's like win-win all around. That's my justification.
What's your favorite way to move?
Walk my dog. I'm a huge walker. Whenever I travel a lot for work, I walk. I could walk miles and hours and steps. Absolutely. That's my favorite.
What's your number one go-to stress reliever? So when you're really super stressed out, what's the like number one go-to?
It's usually walking. I will immediately, and I have a weight vest. I should say I've been using a weight vest since 2015. So I will often pop on a 12 or 15 pound weight vest, and even around the house when I'm doing stuff, picking stuff up, doing chores, what have you. Walk the dog. My dog is probably, and I'm happily married, but my dog brings me the greatest sense of joy. But also definitely talking it through with my husband. He's a great listener and also a great walker. So I'm like, I need to go for a walk. Do you want to come with me? And then we'll walk the dog, and I'm an external processor. So I will externally process to my poor husband.
I do the same thing. I'm gonna walk it out and let's talk it out.
Yeah, walk and talk it out. Yes. Yes.
What music do you listen to when you're working?
I'm big on instrumental music. So I do a lot of lo-fi music. I'll do a lot of Zen spa music. I will listen to jazz or classical. I don't want the words because all of a sudden words will distract me. I'll start singing along. And so if I have that nice instrumental in the background, that's probably my absolute favorite. Piano, thunderstorms. I definitely have a big rotation of that through the day. And at night when I'm winding down before bed.
Yeah, that's come up a couple of times for people. I was listening to the soundtracks, Lord of the Rings instrumentals.
Yeah.
Or the Bridgerton instrumentals. So I've been getting the soundtrack versions where it's wordless instrumentals as well. I think they're just super great.
And can help for people they have a lot of distraction. You'll hear about like brown noise or white noise for if you have ADHD, and that having the musical, the instrumental, or the sound in the background can occupy that part of your brain so that you can be more focused.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It certainly works. What favorite country or place have you visited?
Oh my gosh. Favorite country or place. I have had the lucky opportunity to have traveled a ton in my life. And my favorite.
It's the hardest question.
It's the hard. I was like a lot of places for different reasons. For example, I've been to South Africa. I've been on a safari. I lectured. I did a lot of education in South Africa and then went on a safari, which was absolutely out of this world. I got to do a lot of education through Scandinavia. I am Scandinavian, so I got to go to Sweden and Finland and Norway and Denmark and do hormonal education through the whole thing, and which was wonderful because my husband got to come with me for part of it, and he'd gone out for coffee. We landed, we were at our place. The next morning he went to get coffee and came back and he goes, I found your people. They all look like you. He is not Scandinavian. So that was really fun, just from a like history, heritage type of thing. I am an ocean person, so any type of island or beach place that I go to, I'm always turn into a mermaid or a dolphin. I'm like, oh yes, this is where I would like to live. Trying to think. I've been through Korea and Japan, which is just completely different culture from the United States, and absolutely love it. I've been a few times actually to both countries. And so I'm trying to think if I have a favorite. This is terrible, but yeah, I do love history. I love learning history, and I like walking. So every time I travel, I love boots on the ground, seeing all this stuff. So I've been some cool places.
That's the hardest question to answer for myself.
Yeah.
It's like everything is great.
Everything. I know. I'm going to Copenhagen in a couple months to educate. I'm super excited. I was just in Ireland. I've been to Dubai. Again, I've had really wonderful opportunities. I'm for very different reasons.
That's so cool. Maybe this will be easier to choose.
Okay.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, Christmas. First of all, my birthday, but my birthday technically is June 19th, which is a national holiday, but not because of me. But I will go with Christmas.
Is there any food that you hate?
Green peppers. I cannot handle green peppers. I can do yellow, orange, red. I cannot eat green peppers. I hate them. Yes. Oh, and I don't love seafood. I wasn't really raised in seafood, and so I never developed a palate for it, and then I can eat it. I just don't love it and crave it. So don't hate me. I don't like sushi. I don't crave sushi. Shrimp, fish, not my thing. I'm an adult, but I don't like it.
Pumpkin spice, yay or nay?
Oh, yay. Yeah. I'm a cinnamon person, so usually pumpkin spice has some aspect of cinnamon to it, ginger, clove, and I love that. Those as spices and as scents.
Yeah, same. Do you cook?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely. Very much, which is definitely one of the proactive things I think has helped the most versus ordering out, eating out, food from a box. Cooking is, and it doesn't have to be hard or crazy complicated, but that cooking has made a huge difference, I think, in my health.
Do you have a favorite place to work?
I have a chair in our bedroom, and I don't know why it's a magical spot for this chair, but whenever I sit in this chair, it's next to a window. I don't know if it's the direction it's facing. I get so much work done. As much as I love my desk and my background and all the things, when I sit in the chair, I get to business.
Last question. What is your ideal Friday night?
My ideal Friday night, best world ever would be somewhere oceanfront with my husband, enjoying a super fabulous dinner, being able to see and smell and enjoy the ocean. But because I live in Portland, Oregon, most of my Friday nights are something, again, with him and the dog. And now that it's summer, we're usually outside. So we have a really pretty backyard, and we spend a lot of time cooking, barbecuing, sitting outside, eating, playing with the dog. And it's low key. I'm usually in bed by 9. Reading, winding down, and going to bed. And at this stage in my life, that's the level of stress I want. That's perfect. That's what I enjoy.
So good. So true. I'm right there with you. I love it. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing so much good, juicy wisdom that was info-packed. And I'm sure that people are feeling a little, oh my goodness. So as we always say, pick one thing, do the one thing first. See how that goes, and then pick another thing. Listen to this, maybe listen to it again with the mindset of I'm going to pick one thing that Dr. Carrie Jones told me, and I'm going to just do that one thing. So maybe pick just one of her many amazing tips out and get started with that, something that feels good for you. Thank you so much for being on here with us, and we're going to have you back because I have 20 more questions already. As we were talking, I just had more questions. I was like, okay, I have to cut myself off, but we're going to have you back. So
I love it. I'm here for it. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone for listening, and we'll see everyone in the next episode. Bye for now.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bressack Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties Podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bressack, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebressack.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.